Good evening.
Thank you for coming this evening. Despite it being a nice evening, we've got a good full house, that's great. You've all come here because we're trying to raise money for a defibrillator. This is our first go at raising money. We are also hoping to get a grant from the ANOD and from Rydale District Council, but that's all in the future. For the time being, this is our first go at raising money. Having said that, I'll pass you over to Christine, who will start the trial for us. Christine?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tomorrow, on the 5th of September, it will be exactly 241 years since the body of a young girl who had been strangled was discovered in the cellar of a farmhouse less than half a mile from where we are tonight. Newspapers the length and breadth of the country reported on the heinous crime that had taken place in Bulmer. And Bulmer was thrust into the limelight and stayed there for a number of years in some notoriety. Could we have our slide? You to take my piece of card anyway. The crime was so notorious that it featured in the Newgate Chronicle, which was the true crimes magazine of the 18th century. As you can see, it contains interesting memoirs of the most notorious characters who've been convicted of outrages on the laws of England. It also, a few years later, had a ballad made about it, which was called A True and Tragic Song concerning Captain John Bolton of Bulmer, near Castle Howard. And that then appeared in a collection of songs about famous people of Yorkshire. So it's nice to know that a murderer from Bulmer is our representative. We know about these dreadful events in such graphic details thanks to a Mr. W. Williamson. He was a self-styled teacher of the art of shorthand, and he recorded everything that happened during the trial of John Bolton, more or less word for word. And he then published the transcript as a pamphlet, which he tells us was agreeable to the order of the justices. These reports were printed by Mr. Nixon of Blake Street in York and were sold for sixpence, and were no doubt snapped up by the people of Bulmer, and even more so by the surrounding villages, I should think. And this is the transcript of the trial, and everything that we're going to do tonight is based on that transcript. Information about the victim, the accused, and other characters involved is a little less easy to find. Parish records have been useful in confirming some of the births and deaths, and land records have provided a little information about property transfers. But I still can't say with any confidence where exactly the farmhouse was. It's somewhere near Wandale's Lane, but sometimes it's called Wendale, sometimes it's just called Wandale. But when you've heard all the evidence, perhaps you can have a chat amongst yourselves and see if you can decide where it is. And lastly, I looked at the records of the foundling schools in London and Ackworth, and they've given quite a lot of detail about poor Elizabeth Rainbow, the victim. Now, the jury at the original trial was made up of local men, and here they are. And have a look at some of the surnames, because it's quite interesting to see that still they're local families. The Cockerells, the Todds. No women, of course. Women didn't play an important part in anything these days.
Were they all Muslims in those?
But tonight we are going to allow women to be part of the jury, because in fact you're going to be the jury. You'll hear the prosecution's case and the testimonies of a number of witnesses, including local villagers. And then you'll hear from the accused himself, sitting over here, trying to pretend he's not part of this trial. And witnesses brought to speak in his defence. And when you've heard all the evidence, it will be up to you to decide whether the accused, John Bolton of Bulmer, is guilty or innocent of the wilful murder of Elizabeth Rainbow. So, the facts of the crime are this. Elizabeth Rainbow was a 17-year-old apprentice girl who worked as a household servant for John Bolton and his wife Elizabeth. She was last seen alive in their farmhouse in Bulmer at around 5 p.m. on Sunday, the 21st of August, 1774. 2 weeks later, on Monday, the 5th of September, acting on the suspicions of nosy local people, the village constable obtained a warrant to search Mr. Bolton's house, and the body of Elizabeth Rainbow was found buried in the cellar. She had been strangled. On an examination, he was discovered to be expecting a child. John Bolton, hearing that his house was to be searched, had fled on horseback to York, and he was eventually apprehended the next day whilst trying to board a ferry to cross the River Ouse. The following March, he was brought to trial at the Lent Assizes at the Castle of York, and what happened there is what we're about to hear. But before we start the trial, I think you need some background information about the accused and the victim. So, let's look at John Bolton first. Here's John Bolton. Now, what do we know about him? Well, we know he was a military man. And we knew he was Irish. Yes, he came from Dublin originally. And it looked as if the family were a military family, because we know that he had a brother, Mason Bolton, who actually rose very high in the ranks, became a major, and fought very gallantly in conflicts in Egypt. But John Bolton was dismissed when peace in 1763 ended the 7 Years' War with France. And quite how he ended up in England, we're not sure. But we know that he joined the 1st Regiment of the West Yorkshire Militia, because we have records that he was recruiting for them in Sheffield in 1762. In all the newspaper reports, he's always referred to as a lieutenant of the foot on half pay, which is quite interesting. It suggests that he had a sort of half-time job as a recruiting soldier, and the rest of the time he wasn't actually in the army. And he's usually referred to as Captain Bolton, so we obviously retained his title. Now, soldiers at the time wore this rather amazing outfit of the red jackets, and most importantly, most of them had, next slide, a musket, fife, and drum. Now, you might wonder why I'm telling you about this, but remember the fife, because it plays a very, very important part in this trial. Next slide, please. Now, when he came to Bulmer, he was actually coming into this country. He met with a gentlewoman who had a small estate of Bulmer, and this was Elizabeth Bolton. And we think she was possibly a widow, because she seems to have owned property in her own right, which is quite unusual in those times. They lived in this farmhouse, and this is the one that is sometimes called Wandale Farmhouse, sometimes called Wendale, sometimes Wandale. I personally think it's on the same side of the road as the church, near the top of Wandale's Lane, with land and an orchard going down, partly down Wandale's Lane. But you might have different ideas. You'll hear certain things in the evidence that might give you some clues. Interestingly, as soon as he marries Elizabeth, he's always referred to as Gent. So he's always John Bolton Gent, which was a title that you didn't get lightly. It meant that you were landed, you had money, you had property. So he was obviously a well-to-do man, or he'd married a well-to-do woman, which is more likely. And he had a certain position within Bulmer. Now, the Boltons, between 1765 and 1772, had 8 children, of which only 4 were still alive at the time of the trial. 4 of them died almost straight away, which wasn't that uncommon. But it does make you think what a life poor Elizabeth Bolton had. 9 years, 8 children. So, that's John Bolton. Next slide. Let's now look at the victim, Elizabeth Rainbow. Now, we know far less about poor Elizabeth Rainbow because she had a very sad start in life. She was a foundling, which really means she was either found abandoned on the streets of London, or she was handed in by her mother, who probably wasn't married. The Foundling Hospital was started in London in the 1730s by a man called Thomas Coram, and in fact there still is a Coram charity. And the Foundling Hospital he set up for the education and protection of poor, destitute children. So really, it was an orphanage, but it was an orphanage that wanted to prepare children for life outside and wanted them to have a career. Now children they actually had this. They had a little slot in the wall where you could push in the basket with the child in, so you didn't even have to say that the child was yours. And all we know about the girl who became Elizabeth Rainbow is that actually the admission sheets called her Toodley King, which is a very odd name. And I actually found out that there's a village in Kent called Toodley, and I think perhaps that was where she was born, and she didn't even get a name, she was just named after the village. The Foundling Hospital had a decision to change everybody's name, so everybody's name was changed the moment they arrived in the hospital, and she was given the name Elizabeth Rainbow, and she became Foundling number 4104. Next please. Now most of the foundlings, or a lot of the foundlings that came to the hospital had some sort of personal item with them, because it was understood that if you had to give your child into the Foundling Hospital, you could reclaim them later. If circumstances changed and you could actually look after that child, you could go back and say, I want my child back. So people were encouraged to leave some sort of token, which could be something as simple as a little heart cut out of a card. Some people had quite complicated ones, that's a coin. Other people just made a piece of material. There's a little bundle of ribbons. And the admission sheet noted what the token was, so that if you went back 10 years later, you could say, I left a bundle of ribbons, and they could identify the child. But poor Elizabeth, poor Toodley King, had nothing on her admission sheet. All it said was, she came with white nightdress and a diaper clout around her head. So that was her start in life. And she started off in London, but very soon she was shipped off to Ackworth, which is near Pontefract. It's actually where the Quaker school is now. They'd run out of space, the foundlings in London, and they needed satellite ones up north. And Ackworth was one of the first ones to be built up here. And they selected the healthiest babies, the ones that were most likely to survive the journey. They actually sent them in wagons with little hammocks. And they put all the babies in little hammocks and sent them up the A1. And she came up here. Now, for the first 4 or 5 years, the babies were put out to wet nurses around the countryside. And I like to think that that's probably the happiest time they had. I like to think Elizabeth had a happy 4 years with her wet nurse. But then they returned to the hospital, they put on their uniform, and from there they were being trained for what was going to come next. And in Elizabeth's case, what came next was when she was 11 years old, and a gentleman from Bulmer called John Bolton came and said he was looking for 2 apprentices. He wanted a girl to work in the house, and he wanted a boy to help with the farm. So we see here, Elizabeth Rainbow was apprenticed to John Bolton, and it says, until 21 years of age to be employed in household business. And it's John Bolton of Bulmer in the county of York, Gent. And this is in 1768. Now she came with another apprentice who has an important part to play in this story called Emmanuel Bowes. He was a year younger, but he was also apprenticed, and it says here to be employed in husbandry. So Elizabeth and Emmanuel went back to Bulmer with John Bolton. And next. This is where the accused and the victim then lived together in Bulmer. And interestingly, in one of the newspaper reports, when it was reporting this, the thing it said of Elizabeth was, it was her misfortune to be handsome. So the only thing we remember about this poor girl is that she was pretty. And you see where that leads her. So, that's our 2 people. Back up. Have we got to there? We'll just...
There you go.
We're back there. Right. So that's our accused and our victim. And now, let's go back to Monday, the 27th of March, 1775, and to the Lent Assizes at York Castle. So may I remind you that you're now in a court of law. No shouting, no spitting, no eating or drinking. So all of you people with wine, I'm watching you. And certainly no throwing anything at the witnesses, however much you must dislike them. If you need to leave the court for any reason, please do so discreetly. You may use the door here, and in a real emergency, you may go through the curtains and use the door out there. But it does have to be an emergency. It has to be fire or something like that. And I'm just going to look round the curtains and see if we're nearly ready. I'll be with you in a second. Reconsider yourselves. Order in court. So, please be upstanding for His Worship, the Honourable Sir Henry Gould, His Majesty's Justice of the Court of Commons. Excuse me, my court. Thank you, my lord. So, the trial began with the prosecution setting forth the case. My lord, may I call the first witness?
You may.
I call Thomas Busfield. Do you take the seat? Thank you. Now, we'll assume, to speed things along, that everybody's taken the oath and that they all swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, as you do, David.
Very good.
So, please state your name, domicile and occupation.
My name is Thomas Busfield. I live in York and I am a journeyman to Mr. Garnier, an apothecary.
And do you know the prisoner, John Bolton?
Yes. He came into the shop last spring. I think it was the latter end of April.
And what was his business?
He had a prescription which he wanted making up. I asked him if he knew the nature of the medicine and the quantity to be given, and he said that he did. So I made it up.
And what was the nature of this medicine?
Oh, it was a preparation of steel.
Now, is steel a substance used for removing obstructions?
I never knew it used in any other way.
And may that sort of medicine be given to men for removing obstructions?
No, I never knew it to be given but to women.
Is it dangerous to give this medicine to a woman with child?
It is.
Was the prescription written by a physician?
I do not recall.
Thank you. May I step down? May I now call Rachel Bell?
You may.
Will you take a stand, please? Can you manage that? Please state your name and occupation.
My name is Rachel Bell, and I am a household servant to Mrs. Goddard of Foston.
And how far would you say it was from where Mrs. Goddard lives to Bulmer?
About 2 miles?
Do you recall Mrs. Bolton coming to visit Mrs. Goddard on the 21st of April last year?
Yes, She came with her daughter, a little child.
And what time did they arrive?
Oh, I cannot tell as I was at church. But they went away towards 6 o'clock.
So 6 o'clock and they left. Thank you very much. You may step down.
Thank you.
Could I call Elizabeth Scaling? Elizabeth Scaling? Come on, madam. Don't keep us waiting. Could you please state your name and where you live?
My name is Elizabeth Scaling and I live in Bulmer.
Do you know the prisoner?
Oh, yes. On Sunday, 21st of August last, about 5 o'clock in the afternoon, I went to his house for a halfpenny worth of milk. I knocked on the street door and Mr. Bolton opened it. He did not speak, but went straight into the parlour.
Did you see the deceased, Elizabeth Rainbow?
Oh, yes, she was in the kitchen. I told her I had bought 4pence halfpenny from my neighbour for milk, and I needed change for myself for milk. She said she had no money, and her mistress was away from home. So I said I would defer it until Mrs. Bolton was home.
Now, how do you know it was around 5 o'clock?
Well, the clock in our house struck 5 just as I was leaving. And our house is only 200 or 300 yards from Mr. Bolton's. I only stayed a little while until the girl gave me my milk.
Did you see anything amiss with the girl? Was she upset or was she flustered?
No, I saw nothing wrong with her.
Thank you very much. And step down.
Thank you.
Silence. So I think the prisoner is being a little more
Yeah, silence.
Could I now call Emmanuel Bowes? Now come along, don't be shy. We know this is a bit of an ordeal for you.
I hate audiences.
Just take a seat. You just fit on there. You're Emmanuel Bowes, apprentice to the prisoner. How old are you?
17 next year.
And how long have you been with the prisoner?
I came with him from Ackworth Hospital at the same time as Litherless, about 7 years ago.
Now, do you remember your master sending you on an errand on the 21st of August last?
Yes, at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon he sent me to Stitnam, about 2 miles from Bulmer.
Was your mistress out at the time?
Yes, she went out half an hour before. She said she was going to Foston to see Mrs. Goddard. Her eldest daughter, who was about 7, went with her.
So, who did that leave at home?
My master, Elizabeth Rainbow, my master's son, who was playing outside, another little child who was ill in bed, and me.
And what was the message you were sent on?
I was to go to the cow doctor and ask him to come and look at my master's cow.
Did you go alone?
No, I took my master's son that was playing outside and another little boy that was playing on the green. We all rode on the horse.
And did you find the cow doctor?
Yes, I said my master's compliments and desired that he would come and look at the cow. But he said he was busy and could not come that night, but he would come in the morning. So I got on the horse and went back to the house and got back sometime after 5 o'clock.
And what happened then?
I turned the mare loose in the yard and then went to the door that opened into the orchard. I tried the latch and found it fast, so I went round onto the street door. This door does not open from the outside, so I knocked for a quarter of an hour or so. I knocked hard enough so if someone was in the house they would hear me. William Masterman, who lives opposite, was sitting at his door with a child on his knee, and he laughed at me and told me to knock harder. So I knocked harder, and then I heard the door into the orchard open.
And did Mr. Masterman say any more to you?
He told me he saw my master go round to the stable, which is at the end of the house. So I went to meet my master at the street gate.
And what sort of state was he in?
He was very much in a flutter. His hair stood on end, and he did not have his hat on.
What do you mean he was in a flutter?
When I went, he looked as pleasant as could be, but when I got back, his face was much heated and looked very red.
Did your master ask if the cow doctor would come?
No, he made no inquiry. He said, I thought I told you to go to more houses about the hay after you went to the cow doctor. And I said, I'm sure you did not. So he got the bridle and threw it down and told me to go and catch the mare and go to more houses. I was to tell Robert Boys that my master would not take under a shilling a cock for their hay. So I caught the mare and set off again.
And did you go into the house before you left?
No, but I saw the master go back into the garden towards the house, the same way he'd come out to talk to me.
And how far is it to more houses?
About 2 miles.
So what time did you get back?
It was around 6 o'clock and people were going to milk their cows. I went into the house and my master was there with the little child that was ill. Now, he asked me if the cow doctor would come. I told him he was too busy and he would come on Monday. He also asked me if I'd seen Elizabeth Rainbow on the road as I came home.
So what did he say exactly?
He said, Manuel, did you meet Batty on the road? And I said, no. Have you sent her on an errand? And he said, she's run away again.
So she'd run away before?
Yes, last May. She was away 3 weeks.
Right, what happened next?
My master showed me a bundle of clothes and some caps. He said he'd been half asleep and heard someone slipping along the passage, and he came out to the parlour and saw Betty going along the orchard. He ran after her and she ran faster and threw the bundle over a hedge. When he caught up with her, he said he would lock her in the house until her mistress came home so she could not run away. He said he brought her back to the house, but while he was telling me about going to more houses, she went out to the street door and he'd not seen her again.
Ah. So what did you do next?
Well, I had to milk cows in 2 different places. I came back with the milk from the first 2 cows around 7 o'clock, and then went to milk the other cow, and it was near 8 o'clock when I got back. My mistress was back then. She said she wasn't home at 7 o'clock, and I heard my master telling her that Elizabeth had run away and showing her the bundle of clothes.
So, did anyone go and look for Elizabeth that night or the next day?
Not that I saw.
What sort of clothes did Elizabeth have on when she left the house?
I think it was a brown gown and a checked apron.
Right, now what happened next morning?
When I milked the cows, my master said to me, Manuel, you must get the spade. I have a job for you. So I went to the stable where we keep the spade, but it was missing. I said to my master, where is the spade? And he said, in the cellar, leaning up against the right-hand wall. It was very dark in the cellar, but I found the spade by feeling along the wall. My master then took me to the orchard and marked out a place where I was to take the soil from. I was to fill up a wheelbarrow and take it to the cellar and throw in the earth. When I threw in the first load, I heard someone in the cellar moving the earth about.
Who was that?
It was my master. When I'd taken 12 barrow loads, he came out of the cellar. He appeared in a flutter and his face was red, and he wiped it with a handkerchief. He told me to get more earth and to throw it on top of where he'd been digging. There was no light in the cellar, but I could see a mound of earth over in one corner. I kept digging earth and throwing it in the cellar every morning for a fortnight.
Did you give an account of what happened to Mr. Chumley, the Justice of the Peace?
Yes, it was taken down in writing by John Hall, the constable.
And did they read it over to you, and did you set your name to it?
Yes, he read it to me, but I cannot write, so I made a mark.
And where are you living now?
With John Hall.
Ah, do you recall the quarrel Mr. Hall had with your master?
They had a few words about the hay tithe some time ago. They were both in a passion about it.
And did Mr. Hall say he would be revenged of your master?
I did not hear Mr. Hall say such thing.
One last question. Did you ever see a fife in your master's house?
Yes, there was an old fife that was good for nothing. About the house all the time I lived there. It used to be my master's.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. You've spoken very well. You may take your seat.
Thank you.
William Masterson. William Masterson. William Masterson. William Masterson. Come on, sir. Can you manage?
Only just.
You need a hat.
Your Honour, the justices promise to tell the truth and the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Come on, we haven't all day. Yes, are we ready?
Yes, we're ready.
Could you state your name and where you live?
My name is William Masterman, and I live in Bulmer, about 20 yards from the south side opposite the prisoner's house. My house is a little aslant from his.
Were you outside your house on the 21st of August last year?
Yes, I had with me a small child. I sat down about 5 in the afternoon and sat until 6 o'clock.
And did you see Emmanuel Bowes?
Yes, when I was outside my house on that afternoon, I saw him come and knock on the door of John Bolton's house for a considerable time. I think about a quarter of an hour. I told him to knock harder. Then I told him I could see his master had come out of the back door. Emmanuel went over to him, and then about 8 minutes later, I saw the boy set off on the horse.
When you were sitting there, could you see both doors to John Bolton's house?
Yes, I could see them clearly.
Did anyone other than John Bolton come out of them?
No, I am very certain no one came out all the time I was sitting there.
Thank you very much. Can you sit down?
Excuse me, bit of deference.
Give them a position on the John Hall. Calling John Hall. John Hall. So, could you please state your name and give an account of what you know of this matter?
I am John Hall, Constable of Bulmer. I knew Mr. Bolton had an apprentice girl and it was reported in the neighbourhood that she had been missing for about a fortnight. It did not appear that Mr. Bolton had made any inquiry about her. I was told she was supposed to have been with child and people were suspicious that some accident had happened. Mr. Bolton also had an Ackworth boy and it was reported that he had been seen wheeling earth into the cellar on several days. The other officers and I consulted together, and it was agreed I would go to Mr. Chumley, the magistrate, to get a warrant to search for Elizabeth Rainbow and apprehend Mr. Bolton. That was on the 5th of September.
And was the warrant given?
Yes. As soon as I had it, I returned to Bulmer and went to Mr. Bolton's house to look for this girl with 4 or 5 men. We had a candle and went into the cellar. We could see a mound of fresh earth. We got spades and started to dig. And soon Mark Richardson said he had found something. I told him to dig carefully, and he picked about and found a stick fastened to a cord. And he pulled at it, and we discovered her head. He took the earth off with his spade, and then the body appeared.
And how did she appear?
Not well.
Always get them unswallowed. If you could just answer the question.
She was on her right side, and we saw her hands were tied behind her back by a cord. And there was another thick cord around her neck. It was tied twice round, and there was a fife in the cord by way of a twitch, and it was twisted as hard as could be.
Did you recognise her?
No, she was covered with earth, and the earth was wet. Her face was very much and of a blue colour and very offensive. She was wearing a grey dress with a petticoat with brown and white stripes.
Did you take her out of the cellar?
No, I appointed a guard in the cellar and went to Mr. Chumley to tell him we had found a body. He gave me a fresh warrant to go in search of Mr. Bolton.
So what did you do then?
I set off to York, which is about 17 or 18 miles away. I made what inquiry I could, but did not hear of him that night. In the morning, I was told he had gone through Micklegate Bar at about 5 o'clock that morning. So I went to Tadcastle, but could get no intelligence of him there. I was going to return to Bulmer when a person came and told me the man I was in pursuit of was at Mr. Lumley's. I went there and told Mr. Lumley I had a warrant for Mr. Bolton's arrest. He said he was in the garden, but when we went there, he was gone. I went through Mr. Lumley's back gate and to Lord Mayor's Walk, and then to Gilligate, where I was told he had taken the boat and crossed the river. I made my way to Ouse Bridge, and there I was told he had been apprehended and was taken to the Guildhall. I then went to the Guildhall, where they asked if this was the man I wanted. The alderman then told me to take him, which I did, and upon searching him, found a brace of pistols in his pocket, both loaded and primed.
Thank you very much. You told your story very well. Martha Beedale. Martha Beedale? Martha Beedale, come on, madam. Martha, do you live in Bulmer?
Yes, near Mr. Bolton's house.
And did you know Elizabeth Rainbow?
Yes, very well.
Did you see a dead body taken out of the cellar of Mr. Bolton's house?
Yes, I saw the body of Elizabeth Rainbow. Her body was very well known to me. It was her body and no other. When she was brought out into the air, she appeared very disfigured, but I could still recognise her.
Are you sure it was her?
I am sure it was her and nobody else.
Thank you very much. Joseph West. Joseph West. we've not kept you from any important work.
No, no.
You're a surgeon, I understand.
Yes, I live in Welburn, about a mile from Bulmer.
Were you sent for to open a body?
Yes, the body that was found in Mr. Bolton's cellar, but it had been brought into the yard when I examined it. The body was a female. When I opened the body, it contained a male fetus, about 5 months old.
And what was the cause of her death?
A rope around her neck. It was still in place, wound twice round her neck and twisted tight with a fife. I took it off and examined her throat with my fingers. Her gullet was twisted in two.
Must have been very distressing.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Robert Warwick? Robert Warwick. Come along, Robert. You live in Bulmer.
Yes,
Do you remember where you were on the 5th of September last?
yes. I was going to the harvest field and saw the prisoner. He was riding towards his house, very slowly, through the fields. He alighted his horse, ran into his house and stayed there about a quarter of an hour. Then he came pretty sharp down the yard, over the stile, mounted his horse and came towards me. I observed his pockets stuck out on both sides. I thought it was linen.
So was he going quickly?
He went very quick, and when he went past me, I believe he galloped. He went, the way he went led to York.
So he was going out on the York Road. Thank you very much. Joseph Willen. Joseph Willen. Joseph Willen. Now, sir, I believe you're a silversmith working in York. Sorry, I'll just let you put your glasses on.
Yes.
Did the prisoner visit your shop in September of last year?
I remember the prisoner coming to my shop on the 5th or 6th of September at about 7 in the morning, the same day as he was apprehended. He wanted to dispose of some plate.
And what plate was there?
6 silver tablespoons, 4 of them which had Mr. Bolton's name on them, the other 2 had not, and a silver coffee pot stand and a half guinea. I bought them all and paid him.
And did he have anything else with him?
Yes, he had a book which he laid on the counter. I peeped into it and saw that it was Patterson's Roads.
And can you tell the court what was in the book?
It is a book containing maps of the area.
Had you seen the prisoner before this time?
Yes, I knew him as a customer. Before, he had always appeared to be a gentleman. I had never seen him appear so before.
So how did he appear?
He appeared somewhat agitated and flustered.
Thank you. Could I call the Reverend Thomas Lumley, please?
Typecast. My lord.
Could I ask you please to state your name and domicile?
I am the Reverend Thomas Lumley of York.
Do you know the prisoner?
Yes, I have known him for several years since he left the army.
And did he come to your house on the 6th of September last?
Yes, he came that morning about 10 or 11 o'clock and asked the servant if I was in. I came out and we went into the garden and he pointed to a high wall and asked if he could get over the wall. I said, "For God's sake, Captain Bolton, what is the matter?" He said he was pursued by the bailiffs for a trifling debt. He then asked if he could get into another garden separated from mine by a hedge. I said I must go into the house and tie my garters, and would then return to him. But I found a great many people at my door, and a constable showed me a warrant for Captain Bolton's arrest. So we went through to the garden, but he was not there, and I did not see him again until he was apprehended trying to board the ferry across the river. I understand he had a pair of pistols in his pocket.
Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. Francis Megason. Francis Megason. I I believe you were an officer of this court.
That is correct.
Were you sent to search to see if there were any writs against the prisoner John Bolton?
Yes. I searched the books for the county and for the liberty of St. Peter, but I found no evidence of a writ or any other entry against the prisoner from September 1773 to September 1773.
Thank you very much. My lord, this is the end of the case for the prosecution. Now, sadly, my colleague who was going to do the defence wasn't able to be here today, but I'm going to take her place. So I will now call witnesses for the defence. And I call first Captain John Bolton. Silence, of course! Captain Bolton, please tell the court what you know of this matter.
My lord, on the 21st of August, my apprentice girl, Elizabeth Rainbow, came to tell her mistress that Mrs. Goddard of Foston would be glad of our company to drink tea with them. I said no objection, but as I had a sore throat, my wife said I should wait at home for Thomas Pickering, the cow doctor. As soon as she was gone, I sent the boy Emmanuel to the cow doctor and told him to tell Mr. Pickering that he would come straight away. I had a very good bottle of wine for him.
And where were you when the boy returned?
I was in the front garden. Before that, some lambs of mine that were unruly had got into my grounds and into my neighbours, and I had endeavoured to get them back. We got into a cornfield and then down the bottom of the hill called Wendale's. I got them back up the hill and into Wendale's close. Then, being a little warm with running after sheep, I went into the garden. I put some gooseberries in my hat and I saw the boy had come back and went to get the message from Tommy Pickering.
And what was the message?
The boy told me the cow doctor would be there immediately, so I went to get the cows to the field and wait for him. I waited an hour and was quite out of patience, but he did not come to me. I returned to the house at about 6:30. On the way back I met a neighbour who wanted some wood for from me, and we talked perhaps for an hour. When I went into the house, I rang for the girl to ring the kettle. She did not come. So I looked for her in the kitchen and the bedchamber where my daughter was ill, as I thought she would be with her. But she was nowhere. When Emmanuel returned, I asked him if he had seen Elizabeth, but he said no. I thought she must be hiding and would run away. She had a practice of hiding herself and staying away all night.
So did you look for the girl?
The next morning, I said to Mrs. Bolton, we must make some inquiry of the girl. I would have gone to Mr. Chumley, the justice, but we get no intelligence of him being in the county at the time.
So when did you go to Mr. Chumley?
Sometime later. I heard that John Hall, the constable, had been to Mr. Chumley, so I went to see him myself. He seemed very displeased with me, and I told him that he granted a warrant for John Hall to search my house for Elizabeth Rainbow on suspicion she had murdered.
So what did you do then?
I rode home very fast to overtake the constable. When I got home, I told Mrs. Bolton what had happened and asked if the constable was there. Mrs. Bolton said no. She was very uneasy and desired me to go to Malton, New York to seek advice, which I agreed to do.
Did you take anything with you?
I had got time to put on a clean shirt to see Mr. Chumley, so I took a clean one with me in my pocket.
And did you go to York?
Yes. And when I got there, to Mr. Mortimer's office to ask his advice, but he was not there. So I put my horse on a moving bar and went to the coffee house to see if I could find out anything about Elizabeth. I met a person I knew called Simpson and desired him to make some inquiry about the girl who lived with me at Bulmer. I did no more that night.
So what did you do the next day?
Next morning I went to look for Joseph Simpson outside Monkgate Bar. Then a crowd gathered round me and I was very much frightened. So I went to Mr. Lumley's as he had informed me. I was going to get my horse and call upon John Hall, the White Swan in Petergate, and begged this man Baines, who said he would come to take me, to go there with me. But this was not agreeable to him, so I went with that man to the Guildhall and thence to Mr. Chumley, the Justice.
And why exactly were you carrying loaded pistols?
I'd seldom travelled without pistols for the last 12 years. I was twice been set upon and robbed.
Why did you instruct Emmanuel to fill in the cellar?
The reason for filling in the cellar was that water had come out in it since it was sunk 9 years ago.
It came in so fast that it hurt the foundations of the house, and part of the house fell down 2 years ago. In the winter, before my eldest son fell into the water in the cellar, which made Mrs. Bolton and myself uneasy. I spoke for the tin when it was dry many times to different people. So, as it was now dry and hay time was over, I set about giving directions to the lad.
And did you put any earth in the cellar yourself?
I told the lad I would get the gardener to assist him as soon as I could get him. But I didn't entirely deny I knew any earth myself, as the boy mentioned in his evidence.
Thank you very much. Yes, it was. Jane Taylor? Jane Taylor? Come along, madam. You are Jane Taylor, the wife of Thomas Taylor of Bulmer.
Yes.
Do you know Mr. Bolton, and did you know Elizabeth Rainbow?
Yes, I live next door to John Bolton. I worked for him for a year. I knew his apprentice girl, Elizabeth, very well.
Did you ever hear anything about the cellar being filled in?
Oh yes, Mr. Bolton gave me leave to get water from his cellar.